I'm Buell. I'm a reporter with the Daily Gazette in Schenectady. I'm here at the Schenectady County Historical Society today, talking to Cal Welch about our map collection and his map collection as well. There's going to be a reception Thursday night, the 24th, from 6 to 8. And the exhibit is going to be on display here at the Historical Society through March into April. Cal, why don't we start by you telling us how you got into collecting maps?
My wife and I have always been interested in antiques, and we were in London and attended an antique fair. And at the fair, there was a man selling old maps. And we just couldn't believe that there were pieces of paper that existed that were as old as he said they were. Mm-hmm. And we spent more time in London on that particular trip looking for maps, and we did find a couple. And then the following year we were in Belgium and Holland and England. And again, we ran into some more maps, and we started buying maps.
What was the, typically, what kind of stuff were you collecting before you got into maps?
Glass and china.
Mm-hmm. And once you got into maps, did you stop collecting other things? Or?
Pretty much, yes.
And so it's just been maps for how long?
About 12 years.
12 years, okay. And how many maps do you have?
Quite a few.
Mm-hmm. The oldest one?
1493.
14. And tell us something about that. How did you come across that?
Well, it's a bird's eye view of Florence, Italy. Printed July 12th, 1493. Mm-hmm. And it's part of a book called the Nuremberg Chronicle, which is really the first printed history of the world.
Mm-hmm. How old is the oldest map that we know about? How far back do they go?
Well, there's a map at Hereford Cathedral in England, Hereford, England, mm-hmm. That dates to the 14th century, I believe, mm-hmm. maybe a little bit earlier.
And are most of your maps 8 by 11? Are they huge wall-like things? Or?
They all vary in size. Mm-hmm. They can be very small, just tiny page size, up to 18 by 24 inches.
Mm-hmm. And why did you become intrigued by maps? What do you think it was about them that...
I think we were intrigued by the age, and one of the things that we were most interested in was what the map showed and what they didn't show. In other words, from a historical point of view, if you looked at a map, you would say, well, look at how the Hudson River bends to the east, or look at how Lake Champlain is located over what is now New Hampshire. This is what they thought at the time, or at least this is what they printed on the map. Mm-hmm. And so we became very interested in the oddities, I guess, of mm-hmm. geography.
And are most of your maps of colonial New York, or might they come from all over the world?
We have a lot of maps of the Northeast, mm-hmm. Because we live here. Mm-hmm. We also have maps of England, because we've traveled a lot in England, in particular English county maps. We have maps of Scotland. We have very good friends in Holland, mm-hmm. and so we have maps of Holland. Our daughter lived in Japan for 5 years, and so we have a couple maps of Japan as well. Mm-hmm. And my wife is particularly interested in what are called curiosities, and these are maps that show, for example, the shape of Holland. Mm-hmm. They created a map showing Holland as a lion, mm-hmm. and that particular map is called Leo Belgicus. And it dates back to the War of Independence, the Dutch War of Independence from Spain.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me how you can look at a map from 1776 and it looks, other than some obvious differences, it looks a lot like what a map of like New York would look like today. How did these guys back in 1776, how did they get it so right?
They were pretty good surveyors. Mm-hmm. They formally surveyed these areas, in particular for deeds and title to property. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, the military had a big interest in surveying to determine the course of rivers, trails, and mm-hmm. mountains and streams.
So how skilled were they back then? Were they on a par with like the scientists of today, or was it?
Reasonably, yeah. And of course the tools are not the same as they use today, but the tools are basically the same as they would have used 30 years ago.
Are there some great cartographers of the past that you're familiar with, guys back from the 16th or 15th century?
Well, Mercator, Gerard Mercator, the man who invented the Mercator projection, that is the ability to show the three-dimensional Earth on a flat surface, including navigation aids in that, well, for example, Greenland on a flat map looks very large,
right,
when in reality it's not as large because, but they expanded the North and South Polar regions to meet that. Gerard Mercator was a very well-known map maker.
And this is what century?
He would have been, I think he died in 1695. 1595.
Were there any big advances in technology, like in the 19th century or early 20th century, that really helped making maps, or
not
the whole science was complete by what, the middle of the 19th century?
Yeah, in terms of map making and exploration, for example, the Royal Geographical Society in England, in London, has sponsored map making up till today, exploration and map making. So, no, it's an ongoing thing.
What about the maps of New York State that we have here at the Historical Society? Tell us a little something about them, how accurate they are. They would have been done by who?
I have to look at the maps to get the names of the map makers again. But Sauthier, who has generated the map to our right over here, was a well-known map maker. In fact, I'm currently negotiating to buy it's a German copy of a Sauthier map of this region. And I would say the maps are good. It's interesting to note that on the map to the right, which I believe is 1779. If you look, the area around the Champlain Valley is very good. The area around the Mohawk Valley is very good. The Hudson Valley, the area to the west. And then, if you look at the map, a lot of it is blank. Rivers are shown because people would have settled on the rivers. But, for example, the area around the Adirondacks just doesn't exist on this map. So it's what they knew and what they were living in, as opposed to going out and exploring areas that they didn't know about.
Do you have one or two favorite maps in your collection? And why are they your favorites? Or is it all like having 10 children and they're all your favorite?
They're all my favorites.
They're all your favorite.
I really enjoy looking at them. I enjoy pulling the map out and putting it on the table and poring over it and looking at it, getting a magnifying glass out. But they're so decorative and they're so well done in terms of the printing art that was used that we find them very fascinating.
Did you make some prints out of some of your maps and then put them up on the walls in the house, or you haven't done that?
We framed the actual maps.
Oh, okay. And they're hanging on your wall.
Yeah.
How often are you spanning the globe looking for maps?
We try to, well, I can best reflect last year. We attended the Antique Map Fair in Miami, which is the first weekend in February every year. And that's a combination vacation in the sun and map. And there are very interesting talks. For example, at the Map Fair last week in Miami, Dava Sobel, the woman who wrote Longitude, the book Longitude, was the keynote speaker. And very nice lady. Everyone got a chance to talk with her. She signed books and that sort of thing. So last year we attended the Map Fair in Miami. We were in London the week before the London Map Fair, but we weren't able to attend the Map Fair. Then in September, late September, early October, we attended the International Map Collectors Symposium in London, which there were about 100 people in attendance, and we visited some very, very important map collections. The most important was for the first 25 people who signed up for the symposium. On Monday afternoon, they loaded us on a bus and drove us out to Windsor Castle. And we entered the castle through a back door into Queen Elizabeth's private library. And we were able to look over her map collection. They had some of the nice maps taken, pulled out on tables, and then some of the atlases and so on. We were also, the week before, we were at Hatfield House, which is the home of the Cecil family. Lord Cecil was her primary advisor, Queen Elizabeth I's primary advisor. And so we were there, and in the afternoon we were able to, they put very important atlases out on a table, and we were able to turn the pages and take pictures of the pages and so on, and they were just in the best condition of atlases that we'd ever seen. And then we went down under the garden into a vault. They've air-conditioned, climate-controlled vault, and we were able to view other maps, many other maps from the original Lord Cecil's collection.
Are there famous maps out there that are missing? That we don't know where they are?
There are, and I'm not familiar with the names of a lot of them. They will refer to, sometimes in a book, they'll refer to a map that is, it was known that there was a copy of this map, or there may have been a copy made of it, a hand-drawn copy or something like that.
And who would these maps have been made for? The army, the government?
I think most of the maps that we collect were made for individuals in libraries. For example, Ortelius, Abraham Ortelius was the first person to make a formal atlas, that is, a book of maps of a uniform size, included in a book.
What time period and where?
His first atlas was printed in 1570. And so...
They needed the printing press to do that, obviously?
Yes.
Okay.
And these were copper plate engravings, so they would have engraved the copper plate and then printed many copies from that.
Have you found any old maps of Scotia, Glenville, or Schenectady?
I think the oldest map that I've seen that isn't hand-drawn, that is printed, commercially printed map of Schenectady is one done by a woman in England named Mary Ann Roque, R-O-C-Q-U-E. And she became a map maker when her husband died, and she took over the business. And that would be the first commercially printed map of Schenectady that I know of.
Would she have been here surveying the land herself?
No.
She's just,
it was just
doing it off of readings from somebody else's work?
From others. And that was very common. A lot of the map makers stayed pretty close to home most of the time. So in particular, European map makers, Ortelius, for example, was very good because at the time that he started making maps, Holland, he was in Antwerp. Holland and that area was owned by Spain. So he was able to get information from the Spanish, which was very tightly held, in particular the Caribbean, southern North America.
Now, I imagine you must have had some interest in history, or else you wouldn't be that interested in these maps.
We love history.
Any particular time period that you used to read a lot about? Or?
I'll read about any time period, but I particularly enjoy, and most recently, the era, the French and Indian War era, 7 Years' War in Europe. And I'm currently reading George Washington's, the biography of George Washington as seen through his maps.
Would he be one of our first great cartographers?
No. Well, he was making maps when when he started the French and Indian War. He fired the first shots of the war. So he was busy making maps of the well, there was a very primitive trail from Virginia to what is now Pittsburgh.
And typically these surveyors would take all these measurements and readings, and then they would present their stuff to some sort of graphic person who made the map?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of the time the surveyor would actually draw the map, and then it would be passed off to an engraver who would engrave the plate, and then the maps would be printed from the plate.
Are you going to give a little presentation on that Thursday night when you have your reception?
Well, I think just to individuals who want to ask questions about the particular maps, I'll try to do as much research as Ryan has done, who's done an excellent job of putting this together.
Okay. Cal Welch, thanks for spending some time with us today.